My name is Elizabeth Alexander. I'm almost 58 years old. I grew up on a farm in Eastern Washington State. I do have a dog. You might hear her. Sorry about that. She does respond when I start to speak sometimes. I probably have had fibromyalgia since I was a child. I was diagnosed at the age of 24 after a very painful pregnancy. I developed cervical strain in my shoulder, and I went to see an orthopedic doctor, and they immediately sent me to a rheumatologist who immediately diagnosed me with fibromyalgia. I'm very lucky. This does not usually happen with most people. I was prescribed amitriptyline for sleep, and basically that was all the treatment I had. And that was fine to a degree. My fibromyalgia was fairly manageable. However, I happened to be somebody who was obese and became more severely obese, and it had a lot to do with pain. I developed pain in my feet and my knees. I had a hard time walking, and so my physical movement was very difficult. In 2006, I had gastric bypass surgery, and I lost 140 pounds from that, which helped a lot. When I went to go have the surgery, doctor said, of course, this is not going to cure your symptoms. And I'm like, I know, but it will help my mobility and whatnot. And it basically did. In the 1990s, I had several car accidents. And before I had gastric bypass surgery, I had a motorcycle accident. And those are the catalysts that made my fibromyalgia much more severe. And it took many years for me to recover. Two of the car accidents happened in 1 week of each other. And then I didn't have the motorcycle accident until around 2005 when I was in law school. And while I recovered fine, the bones recovered fine, it caused a disorientation in my body because I was compensating when I was walking. And so it had a lot of issues with that. And my fibromyalgia got worse. And then in 2018, my partner and I moved to Thailand, and I got very, very sick. And they don't know what caused the illness. Because of the gastric bypass surgery, it complicated whatever I had. I had some gastrointestinal illness. They sent test results to the CDC and the Mayo Clinic, but nobody could figure out what it was. And so I suffered from very severe malnutrition. I lost about 70 pounds in about 2 or 3 months. And I was just severely malnourished, protein deficient. I had a stroke, I had a heart attack. I had seizures. And previous to that illness, I had been severely over-medicated pain-wise. And because I'd suffered a lot of psychological issues due to my relationship, but also due to having fibromyalgia and suffering from pain, a psychiatrist put me on 2 benzodiazepines. So I was on tramadol, 2 benzodiazepines, oxycodone, Ambien for sleep, tramadol for sleep, Benadryl, and I don't know, a few other things. So I was severely over-medicated, and it was wrong. And I went through, after I finished law school, I went to law school on all these medications, believe it or not. And I sufficiently did that. And I took the bar exam many times doing that. I never did pass the bar exam, but I came very close. So it wasn't the drugs that were keeping me from it, but it caused a severe lack of dysfunction in just my social and cognitive issues. I was living in a dream world for quite a while. And it took me many years to recover. But once I met my partner in 2015, even though I was still on the medications, we made the decision to move to Thailand. I was going to teach at a university down there. And I just became too sick, and I just about died from that illness. But the recovery has been difficult physically, but at least I have a lot of my cognitive abilities restored. My ability to emotionally deal with my life is much better now. So let's see, where am I? One of the things that happened because of the stroke and the other brain damage, I have some short-term memory loss. So I have to look at my notes here. Let's see. I have, my fibromyalgia causes these issues. I have interstitial cystitis. I have IBS. all these conditions I had before this severe illness, but now I have peripheral neuropathy, and I have short-term memory loss, and I think the fibromyalgia may have an effect on my cognitive abilities. I don't believe I had any brain fog before that happened, other than being drugged to death. Because of all the physical disruptions, injuries in my life that have compounded my fibromyalgia, I am still on quite a bit of pain medication. I take a fairly low dose of an opioid. I take 25 milligrams of oxycodone in a 24-hour period, and I take gabapentin and Tylenol and ibuprofen every 4 hours. That's basically how my day is. I don't sleep very well. Right now, what I'm working on is thyroid. I have a severe amount of fatigue. About a year and a half ago, I was doing very well physically, but now my fatigue has increased exponentially. And while my thyroid tests come back normal, I've been reading a lot of literature that says that the conventional tests for thyroid aren't necessarily indicative of what is specific for the person, and that these standards may not specifically apply to an individual who has thyroid issues. So with my doctor, we're going to be addressing that. Also, I take a supplement called biotin, and that I've read has affects false thyroid results. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. I'm fully disabled, and I have been for many, many years, even though I've tried very hard to finish my education. I have 3 undergraduate degrees and a law degree, and I went to culinary school about a year and a half ago. But I got injured, I injured my back, and my body just hit a wall. And since then, I've been really, really low on my physical ability. However, I go swimming 3 days a week. I'm in physical therapy once a week. I see an osteopath for back issues. And I feel like because I'm on Medicaid, I cannot get some of the services I need. I can't get massage therapy, but I did manage to get a manual physical therapist. They do some massage therapy, and that is included on my insurance. I can't see a chiropractor, but I can see an osteopath. So these are things people can sort of advocate for themselves. I have had some written conversations with Daniel Claw. I noticed that you referenced him, Dr. Monach, in your references, and I've talked to him about the drug. I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's the pharmaceutical version of GHB, which is a drug that has been known as a date rape drug, and it's been prohibited for wide dispersion. You can only get it from one pharmacy, and it's been shown in studies to really help people who have severe sleep problems. And I actually did write to him and asked him if he thought it would be efficacious for me to apply to the FDA for an individual compassionate use allowance for me to take it because of my severe sleep disruption. He said, there's no reason why you shouldn't. And so I wanted to pass that information on to people. My pain doctor has discussed frequently about the new evolving research in psychedelics, how they can help people with depression. And there's some theorizing, and I don't know if it's been shown in the studies, that it can help fibromyalgia. One of the reasons being is central sensitization is about the brain, and psychedelics can put you in a perspective of objectivity on what you're suffering from, and in some ways might reorient the neural pathways in your brain to bypass this central sensitization. So I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist. These are the things I've read about. You're welcome to do your own research on all of these topics. And Dr. Monach is nodding at me as I'm stating these things. I'm sure he's read about them as well. But I spend about 20 hours a week reading research because I want to get better, and I'm working very hard to get better. But the exhaustion, I can handle taking care of the pain most days, but the exhaustion is just dismantling my life, and the fatigue is overwhelming me. And I feel like if I can get the thyroid issue under control, then maybe I can do a little bit better with my life. So I guess that's really about all I say. I don't know if I spoke for 5 minutes or not, but
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you for sharing that. And now I'll ask Vicky to tell your story.
Hello, my name is Vicky. My pronouns are she, her. I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia in about the winter of 2019. Like a lot of people, my severe symptoms were kicked off by a stressor. Again, my severe symptoms. I got sick in October of 2018 with the flu-like virus. And instead of healing, my body attacked itself. The doctors that I had at the time described it as a ganglionopathy. So my body attacked the nerve cell bundles in my back. This was basically a mild version of Guillain-Barré syndrome. I received IV immunoglobulin treatment and I started to recover, but my recovery took a little bit longer than expected. And I was still struggling with joint pain, nerve pain in my back at that time, brain fog, trouble sleeping, and severe fatigue. So in June of 2019, my neurologist sent me to a rheumatologist to decide if it was rheumatoid arthritis or fibromyalgia. I suspected fibromyalgia as my mother has it, and we were experiencing similar symptoms. When rheumatoid arthritis was ruled out, the rheumatologist told me that he would treat me as if I had fibromyalgia, but wouldn't give me the diagnosis. He told me that losing weight and exercising would help my symptoms and told me I just needed to keep increasing my daily walking by 1 minute each week. I was not able to stick to this schedule because of my fatigue and the pain, and as each day my abilities were different. I wasn't able to make much progress and I felt very unheard. In the winter of 2019, I moved and was able to find a new rheumatologist. After simply telling my history and my symptoms, he told me that I more than met the criteria for fibromyalgia and gave me the diagnosis and gave me a pamphlet on to attend a lecture to it, actually from given by Dr. Claw. He also said that he couldn't treat me for fibromyalgia, my rheumatologist, as at that time it wasn't considered autoimmune or a rheumatic condition. So my care was handed over to my primary doctor and my neurologist, and they continued treating me. After the diagnosis and with treatment, I still suffer from the following symptoms: chronic pain of both bones and muscles and nerves, fatigue, trouble falling asleep, joint stiffness, allodynia, and a lot of brain fog. I thought this was all due to the fibromyalgia, but was confused by a few other symptoms I had, such as subluxations of specifically my hips and my shoulders, and a lot of digestive problems, and also why I didn't understand why I had some of these symptoms since my childhood, especially if that illness was supposed to be my stressor and starting point for the fibromyalgia. In the fall of 2021, I saw geneticists who diagnosed me with hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. This diagnosis explained the symptoms from my childhood, and I describe it as the underlying symptoms that I would still be dealing with if I hadn't gotten ill and developed fibromyalgia. Looking back, I've had a few high stress events where symptoms like brain fog and cognitive problems, pain, and trouble sleeping have happened. The first time was my senior year of college in 2015. I struggled the most with brain fog, but luckily got through and graduated. 2 years later, in a graduate program, the memory problems and trouble sleeping were so bad that on top of a few other stressors that I couldn't control, I had to leave the program. I don't know if this was the beginning of fibromyalgia, but it was the first few times that I experienced those groups of symptoms together. Today, I describe my fibromyalgia as the escalation and flare-ups of the hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos symptoms. It's why some days I can do chores around the house, go for walks, do my hobbies, and other days I can barely leave the couch. I have not held a job since 2018 when I had the ganglionopathy. I've tried online graduate programs, but when I got my fibromyalgia diagnosis, I knew that this was my new life. I wasn't sure that I would be able to physically work the job upon graduation, so I left. Even with the accommodations and going part-time, it was a challenge just to do the assignments, let alone thinking of doing a full job. While I have sometimes experienced post-exercise malaise, it's not consistent for me. I would say that that's the hardest part of fibromyalgia for me, is the inconsistency. Why can I do something one day and not another? I just don't know. I'm still coming to terms with my new life with fibromyalgia, and I am lucky to have a very supportive husband and a good team of doctors that are willing to try different treatments with me. I'm still learning how to advocate for myself and learning to pace my energy. So some days I want a refund on my lemon of a body, but it's what I've got. And while it's not my fault, it is my responsibility. Thank you so much for listening to my story.